Bad news for our struggling economy. The Council on Revenues told lawmakers to expect less money. The forecast is for a 2.5% decrease in tax revenues this fiscal year. But next fiscal year, the growth is predicted at 6%. Unfortunately, that's less than the 7.6% increase that had been predicted. Now, the new forecast means the state is short another $48 million on top of the record $1.2 billion deficit. The lower forecast is being blamed on weak visitor arrivals, a slowdown in construction projects, and 7% unemployment.
And it's time to talk UHERO with, of course, University-wise Economic Research Organization. We do it every Friday, and joining us this morning is Professor Sumner LaCroix of the University-wise Economic Department. Good to see you again, Sumner.
Good morning, Dan.
Big report out. This is the quarterly report. The numbers not as good as people were hoping.
Okay. So the revenues for fiscal year 2010, and that's the fiscal year that we're in right now. It's the one that ends in June. Fiscal year 2011 starts in July. The revenues for fiscal year 2010 are unchanged. So the Council in that respect, it wasn't upgrading it, it wasn't downgrading. It's the same as before. I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't increase the revenue estimate. And that's mostly because I think we've seen mostly good news coming out in the last few months. We're seeing the national economy reviving. That's a portent of more tourists coming here. I think we've seen some reasonably good news on the tourist front. Then again, I'm not sitting there at the Council, and I respect other people trying to make these difficult decisions. But I think this is a bit of a conservative report, and I think come the end of June, the state's likely to see a little bit more money. That's generally good news. That could be carried over to next year if need be.
And how do these forecasts treat the delay in tax refunds? And that was one thing that the Governor Linda Lingle was doing to just kind of move the deficit down a little bit instead of really doing anything about it. It's just a way of kind of...
It's a wash.
Yeah,
it really is a wash. So because the budget has to be balanced this year, the tax refunds were delayed until next year. So that gives the state more money this year, but then less money next year. Because we're really looking at a 2-year budget cycle, well, it is just a wash, and the Council just decided, let's not go there. Okay. So that's not factored into these estimates. The downward revision for fiscal year 2011 also just strikes me as somewhat unwarranted. To have a 1.5% decrease in the forecast, 1.6% decrease in the forecast, from 7.6% to 6%, when the national economy is reviving and we're seeing good signs locally. I don't think that that's warranted, but this is all good. I mean, I think if next year the legislature comes into town and finds it has more money to spend, I mean, that's generally going to be good news. The Council meets again in a few months, and it'll update its forecast.
So as far as the Council on Revenue reports, this one not as bad as, of course, the previous 3, 4, or 5. I mean, things seem to be looking up, even though this is a conservative estimate.
Let's remember, too, that this year revenues were down 2.5% is what they're projecting. Next year, they're projecting them to be up 6%. And that does reflect a reasonable turnaround in the local economy.
All right.
Revenues are closely tied to state income.
All right. Thank you very much. That's all the time we have right now. Professor Sumner LaCroix of the University of Hawaii's Economic Research Organization.
Thanks, Dan.